The Mercer estate dining room was heavy with silence. Crystal chandeliers glistened above the long oak table, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. Evelyn Mercer sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the untouched dinner before her. Her children fidgeted quietly, sensing the tension. At the head of the table, Daniel adjusted his cufflinks, his expression sharp and unreadable. His wealthy parents, Charles and Margaret Mercer, exchanged proud but watchful glances, as though they already knew what was about to unfold. Then Daniel broke the silence. Without preamble, without tenderness, he slid a thick envelope across the polished wood. "Evelyn," he said flatly, "it's time!" The words sliced through her like glass. She stared at the papers, her breath catching in her throat. A divorce. No warning, no discussion. Just cold finality, presented in front of their children and his parents like a business transaction. Her eldest son shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "Dad," but Daniel silenced him with a sharp look. Evelyn fought to steady her trembling hands, willing her voice not to crack. "You're filing for divorce," she managed, forcing her lips into the faintest smile as though pretending could dull the humiliation. "Yes." Daniel's tone carried no trace of remorse, no echo of the love they once shared. "It's for the best. For everyone." The room blurred for Evelyn, though she refused to let her tears fall in front of them. Not here. Not now. She swallowed hard, locking her emotions behind a mask of composure. But then, just as Daniel began discussing custody arrangements like a lawyer rehearsing a case, Evelyn caught something, a hushed whisper between Margaret and Charles, meant only for their ears. "She'll know soon enough about Camille." Camille. A name Evelyn had never heard, yet it thundered in her chest with instant clarity. The younger woman. The affair. The reason. Her grief, raw and unsteady, twisted sharply into something darker. Rage, laced with betrayal. She excused herself abruptly, retreating to Daniel's study under the guise of needing air. The room reeked of him, his cologne, his arrogance. Her eyes darted across the shelves, the desk, the polished leather chair, and then she saw it. Daniel's briefcase, carelessly left unlocked. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, rifling past contracts and receipts until her hand froze on something peculiar. A sealed envelope, thick, weighty, its flap unbroken. Her name was not written on it, but instinct told her it was not meant for her eyes. Still, she held it in her grasp, her pulse pounding. Whatever it contained, it felt powerful. Dangerous. Evelyn looked toward the door, listening for footsteps, her mind racing. One thought burned in her heart. If Daniel thought he could discard her so easily, he had forgotten who she truly was. Cliffhanger. Evelyn gripped the envelope tightly, knowing in her bones that what lay inside could change everything. The town's cafe was alive with chatter that morning, but when Camille Laurent walked in, all conversation seemed to falter. Heads turned. She was young, striking, and carried herself with the careless confidence of someone who knew she had already won. Her red dress clung to her frame, her heels clicked sharply across the tiled floor. She smiled as though nothing in the world could touch her. Evelyn, seated near the window with a porcelain teacup trembling in her hands, watched in silence. So this was her. The mistress. The reason Daniel had thrown away 20 years of marriage. Evelyn had expected someone vulgar, desperate, but Camille was polished, elegant, and dangerously self-assured. Camille spotted Evelyn immediately, and her smirk deepened. She didn't hesitate. Crossing the cafe, she slid into the chair opposite her, uninvited. "Well," Camille said smoothly, brushing her hair over one shoulder, "we finally meet. I wondered how long it would take before you came looking." Evelyn's lips tightened. "I wasn't looking. You came to me." Semantics. Camille's voice was honey over venom. "But I suppose you should hear it from me. Daniel and I, we're very much in love." He was never truly yours. Not in the way that matters. The words landed like knives, but Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she studied Camille, searching for cracks beneath the flawless exterior. And then she saw it. A flicker of hesitation, a guarded look in her eyes, quickly concealed. "You're very sure of yourself," Evelyn replied evenly. "But you're young. Men like Daniel, they promise many things." Camille's composure slipped for just a moment. Her cheeks flushed, and her fingers tightened around the glass of water she had ordered. Then, almost defiantly, she leaned forward. "He promised me marriage, Evelyn, long before he even filed those papers. He told me he would give me the Mercer name, the Mercer fortune, the life you squandered." Evelyn's breath caught. There it was, the truth she hadn't expected to hear so soon. Not only betrayal, but premeditated betrayal. Daniel had planned her replacement long before he dared to hand her the divorce papers. But Evelyn didn't give Camille the satisfaction of breaking down. Instead, she smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that unsettled the younger woman. "If Daniel promised you the world," Evelyn whispered, her voice chillingly calm, "then you should pray he can actually deliver it." Camille blinked, momentarily unnerved. Evelyn gathered her bag, rose to her feet, and left the cafe with her head held high, though her heart hammered violently. Outside, the sun burned too brightly, and the air seemed too thin. Daniel had humiliated her, Camille had mocked her, but Evelyn felt something stronger than grief boiling within her now. Resolve. She clutched her purse tightly, whispering to herself, "If Daniel believes he can erase me, then I will teach him how wrong he is. This is far from over." Cliffhanger. Evelyn walks away, but Camille watches her with narrowed eyes, knowing this encounter has ignited a war neither woman can afford to lose. The Mercer estate had always been a symbol of power, wealth, and respect. For decades, Charles and Margaret Mercer stood proudly as community pillars, hosting lavish galas and dictating the town's unspoken hierarchy. But now, as whispers of Daniel's infidelity spread through every corner of town, that image was beginning to crack. Evelyn knew exactly what she was doing. She had not gone to the press directly. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, she fed carefully chosen details to people who could not keep secrets. A church elder here, a socialite there, a journalist always hungry for scandal. Like drops of poison in clear water, the rumors spread until the town could not ignore them. "Daniel Mercer," they murmured at the salon, at the country club, in hushed tones at the grocery store. "Not only cheating, but stealing from his own company? They say he's been funneling money through offshore accounts." By the time the whispers reached Daniel's parents, Evelyn was already playing her part flawlessly. She appeared wounded yet dignified, speaking softly of betrayal and hardship, painting herself as the loyal wife discarded by a selfish man. People pitied her, admired her resilience, and the more sympathy Evelyn earned, the more Daniel's arrogance appeared monstrous. At a family dinner, tension finally erupted. Charles slammed his hand against the polished table, startling everyone. "Is it true, Daniel?" he demanded. "The fraud? The accounts overseas? Tell me you haven't dragged our family name through the mud." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's gossip. Lies. Evelyn's lies." Margaret shot him a sharp look. "Careful. The town believes her. She plays the part of the wronged wife far too convincingly. And you've given her every reason to." Evelyn sat quietly at the far end of the table, her expression serene, almost saintly. But inside, her heart pulsed with triumph. Every word Margaret spoke was a victory. Daniel turned his glare toward her. "You think you can destroy me with rumors? You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Evelyn." She met his stare without blinking. "No, Daniel, it's you who doesn't know." The room froze, tension choking the air. Later that evening, Charles found an envelope slipped under his study door. No name, no sender, just a thick dossier filled with numbers, receipts, and damning evidence. Records of Mercer Industries, corruption. Fraud that could ruin not just Daniel, but the family legacy itself. Charles's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. He recognized the neat handwriting in the margins, notes designed to guide him toward the ugliest truths. They were Evelyn's. Cliffhanger. Charles's eyes narrowed in horror as he realized Evelyn wasn't just seeking revenge on Daniel, she was targeting the entire Mercer empire. The knock at the Mercer estate door was sharp, unrelenting. Evelyn opened it, expecting another curious neighbor or reporter fishing for gossip. Instead, she froze. Standing there was Claudia, her younger sister. Her mirror in some ways, yet her opposite in every way that mattered. Claudia's hair was flawless, her dress immaculate, her perfume sharp enough to sting. Years had passed since they last saw one another, years of unspoken grievances and bitter silence. "Hello, Evelyn," Claudia said, her voice smooth, mocking, almost amused. "You look tired." Evelyn swallowed hard, her composure slipping for only a second. "What are you doing here?" News travels fast. A Mercer scandal? Divorce papers? I had to see it with my own eyes. Claudia's smile widened. "And, perhaps, offer my support." Evelyn almost laughed. Claudia had never offered support a day in her life. But Evelyn, clever as ever, played along. "Then come in." Inside, the air was tense. Old wounds resurfaced instantly. Claudia had always resented Evelyn, the perfect elder sister, the one who married into wealth, the one their mother adored. And Evelyn had never forgiven Claudia for betraying her in their youth, for running off when the family needed her most. Over glasses of wine, the conversation shifted from polite to poisonous. "You know, Daniel was never truly yours," Claudia said casually, swirling her drink. "I saw it years ago, before you married him. The way he looked at me." Evelyn stiffened. "What do you mean?" Claudia's smirk deepened. "Daniel and I, we had our moments, a long time ago, before you ever walked down the aisle." The words struck Evelyn like a blade. She set her glass down slowly, gripping the stem so hard it nearly shattered. "You're lying, am I?" Claudia leaned forward. "You think you're the only one he betrayed? Daniel always had wandering eyes. You were just too blind to see it?" The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Evelyn wanted to scream, to throw her sister out, but something in Claudia's tone, too confident, too sure, made her hesitate. Meanwhile, across town, Camille's paranoia grew. She had noticed Evelyn's calm, her strange confidence, and it unnerved her. She paced her apartment, clutching her phone. "She knows something. She's planning something. Daniel promised me everything, but what if Evelyn ruins it first?" Back at the Mercer estate, Evelyn rose from her chair, her voice dangerously low. "If you're telling the truth," she whispered, "then you've given me one more reason to destroy him, and if you're lying—" Evelyn's eyes burned. "Then you've made yourself my enemy too." Claudia only smiled, savoring the venom. Cliffhanger. Alone later, Evelyn pulled out Daniel's old letters from their courtship, her hand shaking as she found one addressed not to her, but to Claudia, proof. The annual Mercer Foundation Charity Gala was supposed to be the crown jewel of the season, a night of elegance, champagne, and carefully staged photographs that painted the family as untouchable. But this year, the glittering chandeliers only highlighted the cracks in their perfect image. Evelyn arrived alone. She wore a gown of midnight silk, her hair swept into a regal knot. Every eye turned as she entered, whispers following in her wake. Some pitied her, others admired her strength. But everyone knew the truth. Daniel Mercer had abandoned his wife for someone younger, and tonight, the scandal was the only item on the menu. Daniel strutted in moments later, Camille on his arm. She glowed in a scarlet dress, her smile as sharp as a blade. Together, they looked like predators, bold and unapologetic. Daniel leaned close, kissing her cheek in full view of the cameras, making certain Evelyn saw. Evelyn's lips curled into the faintest smile. Let him flaunt it. Tonight was hers. The evening unfolded with speeches, toasts, and endless murmurs. Evelyn mingled gracefully, dropping subtle words here and there, letting half-truths ripple like stones in water. To one senator's wife, she hinted of Daniel's business troubles. To a banker, she mentioned loans that mysteriously vanished. The whispers grew louder, threading through the crowd until Daniel's name was no longer spoken with admiration but suspicion. And then, the moment came. On stage, Daniel was presenting the night's biggest donation pledge. Cameras flashed, guests applauded, his voice booming with self-importance. But as he raised a crystal glass, a screen behind him flickered to life. Gasps erupted. Projected for all to see were photographs, grainy yet damning, Daniel in a hotel room wrapped around Camille. Not once, not twice. Dozens of images, time-stamped over the very months he had still been living with Evelyn. The room fell into chaos. Guests whispered, reporters scribbled furiously, and Camille's face drained of color. Daniel slammed his glass down, demanding to know who was responsible. His parents sat frozen, horror etched across their faces. Evelyn, standing at the edge of the crowd, kept her expression carefully controlled. She had orchestrated every detail, but she feigned shock, pressing a hand to her chest as though wounded all over again. And the crowd bought it, her dignity against Daniel's disgrace. Daniel's voice thundered, "This is sabotage, lies!" But the damage was done. His empire of appearances had crumbled in minutes. As the guests dispersed in a storm of whispers, Evelyn retreated into the shadows of the hallway. She had barely caught her breath when a waiter brushed past her, slipping a folded note into her hand without a word. She unfolded it slowly, the letters stark against the paper. "You are not the only one seeking revenge." Her heart pounded. Someone else was moving pieces on this board. Cliffhanger Evelyn clutched the note, realizing her war against Daniel was no longer hers alone. Another enemy was waiting in the wings. Camille stood at Evelyn's doorstep, rain dripping from her coat, her expression stripped of its usual smugness. For the first time, the younger woman looked less like Daniel's glittering prize and more like a cornered animal. Evelyn opened the door slowly, her brows raised. "You have nerve showing up here." "I didn't come to fight," Camille said quickly, stepping inside uninvited. "I came because Daniel's not who you think he is." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Trust me, Camille, I know exactly who he is." But Camille's eyes burned with something deeper. Fear. She pulled out her phone, swiping through until a recording played. Daniel's voice filled the room, low and furious. "If anyone finds out about the accounts, we're finished. I don't care what it takes. Make it disappear." Evelyn froze. It was more than infidelity, more than arrogance. This was criminal. Fraud. A confession wrapped neatly in audio. "Where did you get this?" Evelyn whispered. Camille smirked faintly, regaining a trace of her old confidence. "Daniel talks too much when he's drunk. I record everything." Insurance. Evelyn's mind raced. With this evidence, Daniel could be destroyed in court, stripped of everything. The company, the family name, the fortune he valued above all else. But there was something dangerous about Camille's timing, something calculated. "Why bring this to me?" Evelyn asked carefully. "You're supposed to be the woman he loves." Camille's smile cracked. "Love? He told me I'd be the next Mrs. Mercer. He promised me everything. But after last night's scandal, he's shutting me out. Do you know what he said? He said I was replaceable." Her voice shook. "I won't be replaced." Evelyn studied her, torn between disgust and admiration. Camille was manipulative, selfish, but Daniel had underestimated her too, just as he had underestimated Evelyn. "You think I'll trust you?" Evelyn asked. "No, but you'll use me," Camille replied boldly, "because we want the same thing, to see Daniel fall." The silence between them was heavy, the rain outside lashing against the windows. For the first time, Evelyn saw Camille not as a rival, but as a weapon, dangerous, unpredictable, but undeniably useful. Finally, Evelyn extended her hand. For now, we're allies, but betray me once, and you'll regret it. Camille clasped it tightly, her eyes glittering. Deal. In the corner, unnoticed, Claudia lingered in the shadows of the hallway, her expression unreadable. She had heard enough to know her sister was dancing with fire. Cliffhanger. That night, Camille replayed the recording alone, smiling coldly, because buried in the full audio was a second secret Daniel had confessed, one she had not yet shared with Evelyn. The Mercer household, once full of warmth, had become a battlefield. The children, Michael, the eldest at 19, and Lily, just 16, were caught in the crossfire of their parents' war. Evelyn tried to shield them, but Daniel knew their weakness. They loved their father, even when he didn't deserve it. One evening, Evelyn returned home to find Michael pacing the living room, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. Lily sat on the couch, arms crossed, refusing to meet her mother's eyes. "What's wrong?" Evelyn asked softly. Michael snapped before she could sit down. "Dad told us everything. He said you're trying to destroy him, that you planted those stories in the press, that you're unstable." Evelyn's heart sank. Daniel's poison had spread further than she realized. "Michael, you know me. You know that isn't true. Then why is everyone talking about Dad's fraud? Why is the whole town laughing at him?" Michael's voice cracked, torn between anger and pain. "He said you're doing it to get back at him, and we're stuck in the middle." Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. "Mom, why are you ruining everything?" The words cut deeper than any knife. Evelyn felt the ground slip beneath her feet. Daniel had turned her own children against her, painting her as the villain. She tried to explain, her voice trembling. "Your father isn't the man you think he is. He's lied, he's cheated." "Stop!" Michael shouted. "I don't want to hear it." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Lily fled upstairs, leaving Evelyn alone in the echo of her children's rejection. Her hands trembled as she sank onto the couch, tears finally spilling. For the first time, Evelyn felt the crushing weight of isolation. But grief soon hardened into resolve. If Daniel thought he could steal her children, he was wrong. She would not let him poison them completely. That night, while searching for old family documents to remind herself of what she was fighting for, Evelyn stumbled upon something unexpected. A faded envelope tucked inside a box of Lily's baby keepsakes. Inside, folded neatly, was a paternity test, one she had never seen before. Her blood ran cold as her eyes scanned the results. One of her children was not Daniel's. Her heart pounded in her chest. Questions swirled. Why was this hidden? Who knew? And how long had Daniel kept this buried? Evelyn clutched the paper with shaking hands, realizing that this secret could tear the family apart even more than divorce ever could. Cliffhanger Evelyn whispered into the silence. "Which one of you isn't his?" As the unanswered question hung like a storm cloud over the Mercer home. The Mercer name had once carried weight in every corner of the town, on the lips of bankers, in the whispers of socialites, carved into plaques at schools and hospitals. But now, that name was tainted. Every headline, every hushed conversation at the market or church carried the same venom: corruption, adultery, scandal. Evelyn had fed the fire carefully, leaking fragments of truth like breadcrumbs. A bribery ledger here, a forged contract there. Whispers of affairs hidden behind closed doors. Each rumor found its way into the hands of someone willing to spread it. Soon, the Mercer empire was not admired, but ridiculed. At the country club, old allies turned their backs. "Such a shame," one woman muttered as Evelyn walked past. "I always knew Daniel was reckless." Another snickered. The mighty Mercers brought down by their own sins. But Evelyn noticed something strange. Not all the whispers were ones she planted. Some rumors were darker, things she had never spoken aloud. The stories were spinning out of her control. One evening, she met Claudia at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. The tension between them was sharp as glass, their conversations always laced with rivalry. "You're playing a dangerous game," Claudia warned, stirring her coffee with deliberate slowness. "You think exposing Daniel will make you strong, but you've opened a door that should have stayed closed." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "What are you talking about?" Claudia leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you really think our mother's death was an accident? You were too blinded by your perfect marriage to see the truth. Daniel was there that night. He was involved." Evelyn's breath caught. She pushed her chair back slightly, staring at her sister. "You're lying." Claudia shook her head, her expression deadly serious. "No. He covered it up. Ask yourself why Father never spoke of it again. Ask yourself why Daniel never wanted you to look into her death." Evelyn's hands trembled beneath the table. Her entire world tilted. Her husband, the man who had humiliated her, betrayed her, and poisoned their children, was now tied to the one wound that had haunted her family for decades. That night, alone in her room, Evelyn pulled out her mother's old journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. She flipped through desperately, searching for anything, any clue that Claudia's accusation was true. And there it was, an unfinished entry on the night of her mother's death. The last line read, "Daniel is here. I don't trust him." Her breath shattered. Cliffhanger Evelyn clutched the journal to her chest, tears streaking her face as she whispered, "What have you done, Daniel?" The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches, their pens poised, their cameras flashing. Townspeople who had once adored the Mercer family now leaned forward eagerly, waiting for blood. The fall of Daniel Mercer was not just gossip anymore. It was an event. Daniel sat at the defendant's table, jaw clenched, his suit immaculate, his arrogance barely masking the cracks forming in his composure. Beside him, his high-priced attorney shuffled papers nervously. Across the room, Evelyn sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture regal, her expression calm. To the casual observer, she looked serene, but inside her heart thundered. The judge called for silence. The trial began. Evelyn's lawyer stood first, presenting documents, bank transfers, offshore accounts, forged contracts. Each piece of evidence was like a stone hurled against the once mighty Mercer name. Daniel tried to interject, shaking his head, whispering furiously to his attorney. But the damage mounted. Then came the recording. Camille, seated nervously in the gallery, avoided Daniel's glare as the audio played. His voice filled the courtroom, damning and undeniable. "If anyone finds out about the accounts, we're finished. I don't care what it takes. Make it disappear." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's parents, Charles and Margaret, lowered their eyes, shame painting their faces. Their empire was collapsing in real time. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he tried to reclaim control. "This is an attack," he spat, glaring at Evelyn, a bitter woman twisting lies into truths. "She wants revenge, nothing more." Evelyn rose slowly, her heels echoing on the floor. She asked permission to speak, her voice steady when granted. "I don't need to twist anything," she said, her gaze locking on Daniel. "The truth speaks for itself. You betrayed your vows, your children, this town, and your own family. And now, finally, everyone sees you for what you are." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. His empire was gone. His reputation, shredded. Even his parents, once unshakably loyal, looked at him as though he were a stranger. But Evelyn wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a document, placing it on the table for the court to see. "This," she announced, her voice cutting through the room, "is the amended Mercer family will. Daniel has been removed entirely. He will inherit nothing. Not the estate, not the company, not the legacy he valued more than his own family." The crowd erupted in shock. Daniel's face drained of color, his arrogance stripped away, leaving only a man cornered and broken. Cliffhanger. Evelyn turned, her eyes cold as steel, and whispered so only he could hear, I promised you, Daniel, this isn't revenge, this is justice. The Mercer estate, once a monument to wealth and power, was now suffocating with silence. Reporters lingered at the gates, eager for scraps of the Mercer downfall. Inside, Daniel sat alone in the darkened study, the firelight casting hollow shadows across his face. His empire had collapsed in days. His name, once untouchable, had become a curse. Evelyn stood across from him, poised, victorious. Her calmness cut deeper than any rage could have. You thought you could erase me, she said softly, her voice cold steel beneath velvet. But it is you who has been erased. Daniel's eyes burned with fury. You think this is over? You think you've won? His voice cracked. I am a Mercer. That name means something. Evelyn stepped closer, her lips curving into the faintest smile. No, Daniel, that's the final lie. She tossed a folder onto the desk. Daniel hesitated, then flipped it open. Inside were documents, photographs, and birth records. Evidence gathered quietly over weeks. His hands shook as he read. His face went pale. You're not a Mercer, Evelyn whispered. Charles and Margaret took you in, raised you, built you into their perfect heir. But you're not their son. You're no heir. No legacy. Nothing but a lie in their grand story. Daniel staggered back, clutching the desk for support. The words ripped through him, unraveling the last shred of pride he had clung to. His parents had sat in court and disowned him. Now Evelyn had stripped him of the very bloodline he worshipped. He collapsed into the leather chair, a broken man whispering, No, no, this can't be. Evelyn's eyes glittered with both triumph and sorrow. You destroyed me, Daniel, but in the end, you destroyed yourself. She turned, leaving him to his ruin. The house echoed with the sound of her heels as she walked away, her silhouette framed in the glow of victory. Outside, the air felt cleaner, the sky brighter. For the first time, Evelyn felt free. But as she reached her car, a man stepped out from the shadows. Tall, composed, with eyes sharp as glass. He handed her a sealed envelope, his voice low and deliberate. Mrs. Mercer, he said, though the name carried irony now. This belongs to you. It concerns your past. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She opened the envelope under the streetlight. Inside were documents, papers that made her heart stop. Proof of a secret she had buried long ago, one that, if revealed, could shatter her carefully constructed triumph. The stranger leaned closer. You've won this war, but your own secrets are about to surface. Evelyn's hand trembled as she clutched the envelope, her victory dissolving into dread. Final cliffhanger. The screen fades to black as Evelyn whispers, Dear God, what have I done? Leaving the audience breathless for the next chapter of betrayal.